Alright, so you like Dune. Maybe you just watched the second part of the Dune saga and are looking for a board game that's going to give you that feeling of Dune, but also have crunchy, meaningful decisions. And there are several well-rated games in the Dune IP. I'm going to make this video here. I've played all of these games a lot, and I just want to give you my opinions on each of these three, and hopefully help you make a choice on which of these three Dune games fits best in your collection, or just a game that you'd like to try to hit the table with your friends and family. Anyway, I'll just go over it here. So the main difference in these, really, for me, I enjoy and love all three of these games. They are all at least in my top 20, several of them in my top 10 games of all time. I love the Dune IP, but the main difference in these is really going to be player count. How many players are you going to play them with? And then also, what style of gamer are you? How much conflict do you enjoy in games? All three of these games have conflict. Conflict's very important to the Dune IP and universe, but it's all in varying degrees and levels. So I will want to say that Dune War for Arrakis is great if you're wanting to play a game that's 2 players. It does go up to 4, but I really feel like the 2-player experience for this is going to be where it's the strongest, a head-to-head battle against the Harkonnen and the Atreides, and just seeing how that plays out. And then you have Dune Imperium, which I feel plays best at 4 players. And this is a game of basically deck building and trying to build up your intrigue and trying to build up your spice collection, but you also, if you have the uprising, you can still ride sandworms. And I would recommend, if you're going to get one of the Dune Imperiums, to get the new uprising version. I feel like it's cleaner and has a lot better like meaningful decisions and the board and the spies and all that stuff. So even if you're just starting, I'd probably still get uprising. And then Dune, the original Dune board game, that this came out actually before I was born, but I've been playing this game since I was 12 years old. This is the newer Gale Force 9 version. And I'd say if you're going to play a really high player count game, like 6 players, Dune, the board game, is the way to go. And this game is really just best at 6 players because you get to have all the factions in play and all the intrigue. And this has a lot of area control and combat and things like that. But I feel like it's best for that. This version, I will say, doesn't have as nice of components, but they're coming to GameFound with a Quisha Shatterack version, and I haven't seen the components for it yet, but they say there's going to be luxury components in it as well, which will bring the basically the production value up to par with these other Dune games. So I want to talk through each one of these, and I'll start with the oldest, which will actually be the Dune board game. So for the Dune board game, basically, you're all going to be playing different factions, and like I said, you should be playing this basically at 6 players, and you're trying to win the different strongholds on the board. And if you're able to get a number of strongholds based on player count, I think like in a 6-player game, you have to either control, it depends on how many allies you have. So if you're by yourself, you need to control a couple. If you're like allied with somebody, you need to control 3. And depending on how many allies you have, depends on how many strongholds you need to win the game. It's also a game where you're bidding for different item cards and trying to get those different items and weapons. And it's all about like intrigue and like knowledge about what your opponent has. And I just love how in this game, not only can there be alliances, there can be betrayal, there are hidden traitors, and there's just these epic moments that come out of this game. And this game, like I said, is older than I am. Like, I played the original version with my dad a ton of times. He made us watch the old David Lynch movies, and then we'd play Dune with a bunch of like my school friends and like church friends and things like that. And it was just like a huge, interesting experience seeing the theme in a board game that really works. And it has cool stuff because the factions are all extremely asymmetrical. The team behind this is the same team behind Cosmic Encounter. They're like the godfathers of asymmetrical powers in board games. And this game, it really shines through with how different people can win. You even have like the Bene Gesserit, who can like not be in combat if they don't want to. They can kind of like flip over and kind of like just be like subterfuge and like messing people up. But then they can also like guess who's going to win the game on what turn, and then if that becomes true, if they predict the future, then they win the game by themselves. But there's also allied victory in this game. There's like combats that you go into, and if you have the correct hidden traitor, you'll flip that over and just be able to win that combat outright. So it's kind of like you pick these hidden traitors at the beginning of the game, and like, hey, alliances come up, you don't really want to ally with the people that you have traitors in their midst. So it has these interesting intrigue moments, and I love the rock, paper, scissors kind of combat in this game. The weapons all have kind of like different weapons they work against, and you're kind of bidding your units to fight against each other. This was done first here, but it's very similar to Scythe if you've played that game, where you're going to be bidding how many units you're going to be put into combat. Those units are going to disappear regardless of whether you win or lose, but if you win, then you wipe out the rest of your opponents. So you're both kind of like, how many do I want to bid? And there's also spice collection. Spice will blow up out of the desert, and players are going to be struggling over that spice because spice is going to do a ton of stuff. It's going to allow you to get more units on the board and ship units to the planet. It's going to allow you to get those weapons and cards and that are basically integral to like your strategy for the game. And you can also, if you're playing with the advanced mode, you can kind of like boost your combat with spice. So there's a ton of things you can do in this game. There's a lot of different ways to play it. I really recommend playing it at higher player counts and having someone who knows the game very well to be able to teach it, because there's a lot going on with all the asymmetry. But the game is very, very exciting and very, very fun, and adds to those betrayal, backstabbing moments. So if you're into that style game, if that sounds fun to you, definitely check out Dune. I would say wait for the new edition that's coming to GameFound. I don't know what it's going to look like yet, but one of the things I'll say is like all the cardboard tokens in this are just kind of like a little bit lackluster, but I do think the gameplay shines through and it's a lot of fun. Next one here is probably the most popular Dune game currently, and that is Dune Imperium. This is a gigantic deck building game where basically all the players are going to be trying to gain 10 victory points to win the game, but you can do that by like gaining favor in all the different houses that are on Arrakis and dealing with Dune. And then you're also going to be having these big epic combats the end of each round, trying to figure out how to win these different combat cards to get points and get different things like that as well. There's slightly different stuff in between the regular Dune Imperium and Dune Imperium Uprising. I do enjoy Uprising more just because it has like that sandworm combat, and I think some of the spaces are cleaned up and just has slightly different strategies with the spies and things like that that I feel like make the game even more exciting and make it feel even more Dune. But it's so cool to have these hands of cards that you're getting, that you see the different Dune characters, and you're going to be building up your hand and your deck of cards, trying to maximize the strategies to be able to take over the spaces on the board. This game is a worker placement game with deck building. So essentially you're going to be battling with the other players over which place they're going to, and turn order matters so much in like figuring out which space you're going to be able to get, and blocking certain characters like, oh, Muad'Dib is about to get the hook, so he's going to have worms, he's going to be able to trigger his ability every time. Like the players knowing the different characters and the way they play. There's also a lot of asymmetry in this as well. You all have different starting characters, and you can build your deck and change the way your deck plays along the game. This game is extremely well regarded, and it's for good reason. Dune Imperium is a ton of fun to play. So if you're playing a game with 3 or 4 players, I would really recommend playing Dune Imperium, especially if you like combat in games, but you don't like combat to be just like in your face, beating the crap out of each other, or somebody jumping on you. This game doesn't feel as much that way because combat's going to happen at the end of each round. Regardless, it's your choice whether you're joining in there, and you can also win this game without like winning too many of the combats. You might need to win one, but you could do a lot more running up the tracks to build influence with all the houses, and going for spice must flow cards, being able to build those combos in your deck to make it so that way you can let the other players squabble over all of the combats and you can still come out victorious in this game. Or you come in on that last combat to win those 2 victory points and push yourself across the line when you've been out of combat all the rest of the game. This game is exciting and fun, so I definitely love Dune Imperium. So if that sounds like it's more up your speed, definitely check that one out. And the last one here is the newest entry on the list, and this is Dune War for Arrakis. This game is a bombshell. This is crazy. It feels so much like Dune. And this game kind of has a little bit of the DNA and a little bit of the engine from the War of the Ring board game, and I really enjoyed the dice action placement and that. So basically you roll your dice and you're going to be using those dice to trigger different actions, but this has so much theme in it, where the Harkonnen are trying to crush the Fremen and the Atreides and take out all their sieges, but they have to be aware of collecting spice as the game goes along. And then the Atreides are completely different. They're going to be trying to basically do all these prescience cards and complete all these different missions to gain the favor of the people of Dune, and kind of like mess over the Harkonnen's plans, and it just feels very, very asymmetrical. Once again, a very asymmetrical game where the two different sides are going to be doing completely different things. The Atreides are also trying to take over research stations, and they can fight back against the Harkonnen. If they're able to take over their strongholds, they're going to run up their prescience tracks, but the Harkonnen the whole time are trying to destroy those sieges and just take out. They have overwhelming forces. They have tons of people on Dune, but they are trying to figure out a way to find all of the hidden Fremen and figure out where their strongest strongholds are, so that way they can gain the supremacy to win the game. I love the way this game plays out. I love the fact that all the leaders have cool abilities that once you get them into play, they're going to upgrade your dice actions and make you even better. And the table presence of this game is kind of unrivaled. Like, everything looks so cool. Like, CMON does an amazing job making their games look great. And I will say, for me, this is going to be a 2-player game. I understand there's a 4-player mode, and there's solo you can play as well, but this just feels like a battle of wits against 2 people, and it just feels so fun to like have that head-to-head where each side is playing different. And this does play a little bit faster than War of the Ring as well. This is around, like, you could play it in 2 hours, maybe 2.5 hours. For your first game, it's probably going to take a little bit longer, but once you get the rules down, you can get the time down on this a lot faster than you could play War of the Ring on the table. And it just has so much of that flavor. I love the fact that the Fremens are literally riding sandworms. Like, you're putting out all of these worm sign tokens, and they're kind of like bridges to move. But then on the other side, the Harkonnen are putting out ornithopters, and those help them move. It just makes sense, and it feels thematic, and it feels epic as you have the Harkonnen versus the Atreides. I love all 3 of these games, and I think if you're interested in Dune, and you feel like the genre of that game fits your gaming taste, you're not going to go wrong. I do feel like Dune Imperium is probably going to be the one that's going to fit most people's tastes overall. Mostly because it's a little bit more Euro-y, it's a little bit more gaining victory points, and less in your face, just fighting, like you're chucking dice in Dune War for Arrakis. Some people don't like the randomness that can happen with luck swings in combat like that, but I love the theme in that game. But then the original Dune board game, there's just so much intrigue and backstabbing that I don't get from the other games. Like, the alliances just feel so Dune to me, and having those hidden traitors. All 3 of these games, for me, are amazing. But I hope this video has helped you find which one might fit your taste a little bit more. Anyway, let me know in the comments down below which is your favorite of these 3 games. And also let me know what you guys think about the new Dune movie. If you guys are going to theaters and watching it, it's coming out like this Thursday. I know a ton of people are going to be watching it. Gigantic space epic. I grew up with Dune, and I love the IP, and I can't wait to see it myself. This has been Roy Canay. I hope you guys are having a good one, and the spice must flow.